start a tiny bit with, oh, okay, we're recording. I just wanted to say about International Women's Day, it's been around since 1911. And so we're really excited about being here in 2024 and celebrating the presence of women in the international community. And because we all are connected to the international school world, I think that's another really good connection amongst all of us. And we're here today to really think about the topic of inclusion and inspiring inclusion for the people that we work with, the communities that we serve, and the families that we are part of. And really, we're hoping that today we will inspire inclusion for you as well. Okay, I don't know why there's, all right, good. Okay, and so what I'm going to do is just ask the three panelists, these amazing women, to go ahead and introduce themselves and to share a little bit about who they are and why they're here today. So we'll start with Junla, and then we'll go to Shireen and then Serenity.
Hey everyone, my name is Jala Medalinsky, and I am currently the elementary and middle school principal here at Schutz American School in Alexandria, Egypt. I've been here for about 4 years, but I've been in international education for about 18 years. I think, Madeline would ask, what brought you here? And I would say that if you were going to look at my yearbook photo in 8th grade, right under that yearbook photo, you would see future career traveling the world. And I've stayed true to that part of who I am and what my passions are. And I think what's really inspired that has been my mother and her story as a refugee from Laos, and the ways in which we've been able to, and she's been able to really reclaim her place in the world. And my time here in 4 or 5 different countries, living and working and pursuing a career in international education has kind of continued with that reclamation of space. I'm so happy to be here.
Fantastic. Shireen, do you want to go next?
Yeah, I'm excited to be here as well. It's lovely to be in community with all of you. So I'm Shireen Ali Khan. I am first and foremost a mother. I'm really proud of that accomplishment. I've got 3 children, 2 adult children and one who's in his final year of IB. So there's a lot of, tension in the house at the moment. I have been in international education this is my 14th year, actually. All my education experience, bar maybe 1 or 2 years, has been in international education. I'm in international leadership now, so I'm an assistant principal at the International School of Geneva. And I am the daughter of, also like Junla, a refugee. My mother had gone through the partition of India in 1947, the year before the partition, I would say, happened in Israel and Palestine. So there's a thread that runs through many communities where we're children of refugees. And what brought me into international education is about making sure that our stories don't die with us. It's about making sure our stories live on after us, which is really important. It gives our children an identity. It educates people from different perspectives, different narratives to what we're often taught in our history books. And also I'm continuing my mother's Kashmiri legacy of strong mountain people, strong women. So I'm inspired to be with you here on International Women's Day.
Beautiful. And Serenity.
Hi, good morning, good afternoon, everyone. I'm so sorry that my video for some reason is not working. This is a bit sad and unfortunate, but I'm glad that you're able to hear me. So again, my name is Serenity Smith. I'm originally from New York City. I love to say that I'm all about inclusion just based on where I grew up And so if you've ever traveled to New York City, if you've taken the A train and have gone to the very last stop of Far Rockaway, Queens, that is exactly where I'm from. So I was born and raised in Far Rockaway, which is a community of a melting pot of Italians, Jews, Russians. From there, I've had the opportunity to explore my career first in politics by working on the U.S. House of Representatives and the United States Senate as an intern for the Congressional Black Caucus. And then I went into the New York City Teaching Fellows, where I ideally was only going because they were paying for my master's. And then it turned into being a calling and a purpose in my life. And since then, have lived and worked and taught in New York City, Brooklyn, Atlanta, Georgia, Amsterdam, Netherlands for 3 years. And I'm currently working in Accra, Ghana, as the head of department for special education here at Ghana International School. So I'm going to try to work on my video in the backgrounds and hopefully I can appear. I apologize, but I hope that hearing my voice and hearing my story, you'll be able to still resonate to many of my responses today.
Oh, thank you so much, Serenity. And I just want you to know that your voice comes through so clearly. And it's just, I can't wait to see your video, your picture of yourself. But you're coming on strong, so that's really great. And I want to introduce. Yeah.
Sorry, Madeline. If I can just add that I will try to log onto my iPad, and so I will be in the audience, but I may not be with the panel.
Okay. With your name, will we see your name? So
hopefully, there's a lot going on right now.
Okay. All right. We'll just let you figure that part out. I'm going to introduce myself as well. My name is Madeline Maceda Heidi, and I'm currently no longer with a school, but I'm an independent consultant, and I have several different projects that I'm working on. I work for AMISA as the facilitator for their Women in Leadership organization, and then I also work for Carney Sando as a recruiter. And then I'm a mentor for ALOC as well. And I have a few other things going on. But what I wanted to share with you is that I grew up in the Philippines, and in terms of cultural identity, I consider myself very Filipino. But I'm currently living in Canada and learning what it means to be a Filipino Canadian, which is really interesting. So I'm so happy to be here and to be celebrating women and to be thinking together with all of you about the topic of inclusion and everything that means. And so just to kind of warm us up here with our panel, I thought we could just begin by thinking about an experience of when any of us were included and how that actually made us feel in terms of belonging and empowerment. I don't know if maybe Shireen or Junla or Serenity has a little tiny experience that you want to share just to get us going before we jump into our questions.
I don't mind starting. I've got a very quick story, actually, and it was so moving because, as we all know, Ramadan is coming up next week. So Ramadan Mubarak, Ramadan Kareem to everybody. It was actually 2 years ago, I believe now. It was at a conference with ECIS. And at conferences, they have lots of nibbles all day. So by the end of the day, you feel quite full. And I was fasting at the time. But as soon as I entered in where you had the sign-in desk, there was a small box with some dates and some coconut water. And it brought tears to my eyes because I was not expecting anything like that. It was just a simple small box. It said for our participants, our delegates who are fasting with, this month. And that's just a quick small story, and it stays with me. It stays with me. I'm going to a conference in Paris next week. So my expectations are high, Paris. Get ready.
Oh, I love that. That is amazing. Food, through food.
If I can jump in here. Thank
Hi,
you.
Serenity. Now we see you. Yay.
I'm trying here. Wi-Fi isn't always the best here, so I am working with what I have, and I appreciate the grace from you all. A story about inclusion. So I think with my experiences having started my career in New York City, going to Amsterdam, Netherlands, and currently being here in Africa, I would say my current experience is very unique in the fact that the school that I work in, there are a lot of men in positions here. So ironically, in New York City, we have a lot of campaigns that go about wanting men to be in education, to be teachers. But here, we have departments that are full of men. So for example, the mathematics department here in a secondary school are all Ghanaian men. The sociology, economic, and business studies department, all men. And I've never been in a setting where it's just been all men. And at the same time, they're all Ghanaian men. And so the unique aspect of my job is that I am actually the foreigner. So in my secondary role, it is a Cambridge curriculum. And so this is also new for me. We call it Forms 1 to Upper 6, which is really your 7th grade to grade 12. And all of the staff here are about 95% Ghanaian. So here I am as this Black American young woman in a leadership role where I'm having to find myself in spaces with all African men. And culturally, my understanding and studies, and as I'm learning through this experience, African men are dominant in this culture as well. So to be in this space and to be accepted, to be heard, and to actually be seen as someone who has knowledge, whether it may be because I'm coming from America, the Western world, it feels very inclusive for me in this space. Whereas you may not hear that from some women who are Ghanaian themselves or around the world in general who are in spaces of men, I feel very inclusive. So I would say my current experience has made me feel like, okay, this is interesting, right? To be in a space full of men as a woman.
Yeah, wow, that's pretty unique to feel so included among so many men. It's cool. Thank you. Oh, you're muted, Junla.
I think when I hear Shireen and Serenity share their stories about both feeling seen and heard, my story of inclusion, or a moment that I'd like to share, offers something a little bit different. I think if I was going to find a pivotal moment in my life as an international educator around feeling included, it actually involved there was a situation where I was in charge of organizing this conference that took a lot of work, time, effort, and energy. And during one of the keynotes, the person that was in charge of the presentation made a little bit of a joke that really hurt my feelings, to the point where it's like, you know, when you're in the audience and somebody says something that's harming to you as a woman of color, and there's no real opportunity for you to respond, except you feel that tension rising in your face and everything. And I went to the head of school, who was also present in the audience. I went to his office right after that and just ugly cried, like just ugly cried, just sobbing, crying, and being incredibly vulnerable. And in that moment, he was incredibly affirming and recognized and named what the issue was, so that I didn't even have to voice anything, and then went back to advocate on my behalf and repair the harm that had been done during that keynote. And I would say that was probably a really pivotal moment in my life, where I found advocates and allies in my environment that I may not have necessarily recognized, but ugly crying helped, I guess.
Wow. Wow, I have goosebumps. So just, yeah, and sorry that you had to experience that, but how wonderful to have a person that you could trust in responding to you. So very cool. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you, all three of you, for doing that. And I know all of us have stories like this, and it's really neat to be able to hear the positive stories about feelings of belonging and inclusion at this time. So just the way we're going to do this today, each of our presenters has prepared at least one, probably more questions, but we're going to focus on one. And what we're going to do is to just sort of go to each one and have them do a little bit of a presentation or a little opening about their topic, because they're fabulous questions. And then we're just going to kind of have this conversation. We're going to do it 3 times, hopefully, so that we can get to all of those questions. So the first one is Shireen, and the question that she has come up with is this: how do we model excellence and not fall prey to the myth of perfectionism, the model minority, and the indoctrination of working twice as hard as everyone else? Go for it, Shireen. Open the
Yeah,
topic.
thank you so much. That's what I've been thinking about. And I think what's prompted me to think about this more definitively and determinedly is we've had some new colleagues that have come into our context that are younger and coming in with less experience, newly qualified, maybe coming from contexts outside of the international school ecosystem. And that's really made me think about the fact that in many organizations, in international schools specifically, there are people that have been there for a very long time or have had a lot of experience. And what do we do with those people that are coming in that are really grappling with this idea of a work-life balance? Many people that have come from minoritized communities, and various intersectionalities. So mine specifically, and intentionally, I'm saying it in this order, is being a woman, which gives me the most privilege out of my other intersectionalities, being a woman of color, being a Muslim woman, and then being a Muslim woman that is hijabi, that covers. So in that order, I've got that level of privilege. Being a woman, funnily enough, on International Women's Day, is the one that is most privileged. So I often wonder then what happens if you add all those things up and then you're somebody who's really quite new to the international circuit or quite young. And that's what I've sort of been thinking about. We do need to address the idea that many of us have worked incredibly hard to get to the levels we have. We've got a principal, we've got assistant principal, leadership in other areas. What have we had to do? What have we had to go through? What have we missed out on because we're from these various communities? So that's what I've been thinking about. And I've actually been learning a lot from our younger sisters, because they're also making me think about what I have had to forego in order to get to the places that I'm still on my journey, hoping to go to, and what I've been aware of that I've had to forego, and things that I haven't actually been aware of. So I've been thinking about those things, and this millennials and Gen Z are making me think about this. And some of the things that are coming to mind are, well, 2 kind of headlines that I can actively do and use this place that I'm at in order to elevate and amplify the younger sisters that are coming in. And I say sisters, not specifically women of color, but although I am supporting them because there are people that can support women that are not, of color, that already exist, that are in senior leadership roles. So I am trying to, I would even say, I'm succession planning. When I got my assistant principal role, I was already succession planning. I was thinking about who within the context can go on a certain PD training that will allow them to enter these spaces that maybe somebody didn't do for me. So I take it as a big responsibility. And the 2 words that come up for me really are modeling and mentoring. So when I talk about modeling, is this idea of really being very open about what my experience has been in a space of psychological and identity safety, I would say. So it's, I often talk to the people that I'm mentoring, bring the biscuits because I've got the tea. So I have really honest conversations. I have really honest conversations with them. Avoid this PG, that's not going to get you where you need to go. Look at that one, follow this one on LinkedIn, really direct. So that's sort of antithetical to coaching. But then I also use coaching discussions where it's solution focused coaching, where I believe that the person has the answer inside of them, and through a series of questions and prompts and provocations, you can have that person feel empowered by arriving at a point where they felt they've helped themselves on their journey. So that's modeling again. They're modeling to themselves through asking the right questions. Actually, they've got the answers there. But then there's also the other thing where I'm spilling the tea on things that, you know, they need to know. And I wish I had that. You know, I've experienced that from some male leaders, which has been wonderful. But, you know, I will speak power into others. So the people that I'm working with, I'll tell them I have your back. You know, I'll tell them I will support you. And I'll make an effort to try and amplify the quieter voices, like if we're in meetings and those sorts of things. And I really try to be accessible and available. It's really important, the timing. So those are a few things that I'm thinking about and a few ways that I've tried to think about uplifting others. And I have to say, really a big hats off to ALOC and the work and the people that I've met through ALOC that have allowed me to grow in that space, and then just paying that forward. There's a really beautiful cycle of support within this you know, community. So yeah, they've been the wind beneath my wings, and I'm planning to take people up with me wherever I go.
Wonderful. Junla and Serenity, please jump in.
Shireen, can I just tell you that I have like bolded and underlined, bring the biscuits and I'll bring the tea. Listen, because 18 years in international education, there is a lot of tea and there are a lot of unspoken rules and pathways that are not necessarily apparent to people who are not well experienced in international schools, and making that clear and transparent and visible and accessible and amplified. You're really thank you for bringing that up. I think another thing that I'd like to just add to that is I think a lot of the time I personally have been struggling with this idea or this notion that I need to do the equity work, because once I do the equity work, then I can X, Y, and Z. Equity can happen. And I think what I've grown to learn over the years in my own work and in my own practice and developing my own self is that equity should exist, not whether or not I actively involve in it. Now, I'm not saying you shouldn't do anything, but the work shouldn't solely be set on your shoulders as a woman and as a woman of color. That work around inclusion, that work around equity is collaborative in nature. It's grassroots in nature. It's built on a robust root system that I think what I find myself doing as as an experienced person in international education is just making sure that I'm identifying where those support systems exist, and what do I need to be able to thrive in those systems, and then where are the points where I can just leverage it in a way that it is ready to be leveraged. And I think that has really been an important practice, and recognizing that equity work or inclusion work, both small and big, but small is still the work. And being able to recognize that as well has been incredibly important in the ways in which we can find that balance and move away from the myth of perfectionism and move towards that collaborative work that involves everyone and not just me or you, because it's what impacts you and me.
Cool.
Thank you.
Serenity, do you want to add to that?
I actually wanted to ask you if you can repeat her question once more.
Sure. It had to do with how do we model excellence and not fall prey to the myth of perfectionism or being the model minority or the indoctrination of working twice as hard as everyone else. And what I'll say as you're thinking, Serenity, is just that I think it's really amazing to be having the mindset that we have to think about our younger sisters, people who come after us and who maybe haven't had the mentoring. I think that's a huge population that really is going to change the world even more than the, certainly more than my generation or the one after me. It's almost like the next generation will really make that change. But Serenity, please jump in.
Yeah, if I can just briefly add before my internet cuts off again, possibly, that just to add to what I've already heard about the usage of community and mentorship, and
Uh-oh. I think
I think for myself as a young international for years, okay, just being in the international space for 4 years, I'm fairly new. I am a young international educator, and something that has been helpful for me is to have that community of mentorship. I think the added bonus for me is that I have been trained in the world of politics. And so being in the rooms of people like John Lewis or Maxine Waters, Cory Booker, and being an intern, I was always told to be radical, right? To never be afraid to speak up, to stand up, and to advocate for what is right. And so having been in this space and having, I think, gone far in this space, that has been used to my benefit. If I am when I was in the Netherlands, I was maybe one of 10 BIPOC educators at my school, and I well spoke up. I was not afraid to be a target, although a lot of us are not, not wanting to be in that position. But I think having that stance and that truth and that being poured into me, but also having a community of mentors and people to tap back into, to pour back into me as to why I'm doing the work has been beneficial in moving, the agenda forward as far as it's not about me, but it's about the people that's to come behind me. And it's also about who am I doing the work for currently. And so that is for students to have the exposure that if you're in this international space, and we're supposed to prepare students to be globally minded and to be in a world that is globally, that's cultured and to be the leaders of tomorrow, then how are we preparing them and exposing them to history? And so I like to say that I'm a radical person. I stand for the truth. I fight for the truth. And at the same time, I'm already a target as a Black young woman, but I might as well use that to my advantage to make room and ways for other people to be in this space.
Well, Serenity, I'm going to have you keep going here into your topic because this is a great segue. We couldn't have planned it better. So Serenity's question, and I'm just going to kind of, use that first one, Serenity, because we all had many questions, but this is Serenity's question. She said, in a world that centers around masculinity in the workforce and in leadership, more so in workspaces and opportunities where women are often questioned, ridiculed, and in a state of proving their rights and worth to opportunities. Her question is, how do we, the concept of fear, being afraid, but doing it anyways. And so how does that get manifested? We're afraid, but we do it anyways. And Serenity, you're just gonna open that topic and keep going.
Yeah, so just to give more context to when you can be afraid but doing it anyway. And so the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation was truly powerful time in my life, and that was under the Obama administration. Each intern is selected from a state. One intern is selected from a state to be with their representative. And so when I'm in a room with 50 interns, and we had what was called brown bag luncheons. And so when a senator or congressperson will come and speak to the room of 50 interns to share their stories, to share inspirations, to give training, for me, that's what awoke in me to be in this room, in this Capitol, and to be surrounded by powerful people. Woke up that no matter we're fighting for constituents. We're fighting for people in our community. And as an educator, I'm in a culture where, maneuvering and being an international educator, there are different cultures that won't accept students with learning disabilities. There are cultures that won't accept women being in leadership. There are spaces that won't accept you being Black in leadership. And so having that background of really people just pouring into us, it really awakened in me that you cannot be afraid to get in trouble. You cannot be afraid to push the agenda. There's this saying that a mentor has to me that, I want you to like me, but it's okay if you don't, right? And that quote was just like, but I do want people to like me, but people are not going to always like you. So how can you sometimes push forward even when people are going to judge you, even when people are going to ridicule you, even when people are going to make a face at what you have to say? And then I also want to tie into potential, right? There's a few quotes that stand out to me when it comes to potential. And I'm going to read 3 of them. This is from Dr. Miles Monroe. One of them is refuse to be satisfied with your last accomplishments because potential never has a retirement plan. Do not let what you cannot do interfere with what you can do. And the second quote is potential is therefore not what you have done, but what you are yet able to do.
Wow.
And the last quote is potential is always present, waiting to be exposed. It demands that you never settle for what you have accomplished. So that speaks to being bold or being afraid but doing it anyway. Like, are we going to limit the opportunities? Am I going to limit applying for the role, though it says you need 7 to 10 year experience? Am I going to limit being in a space where I may be the only one? Am I going to limit myself because I'm concerned or afraid of how I may be viewed or how I may go into this unexperienced? And I like to say, I'm very vulnerable and transparent. I'm 30 years old. And for me, I feel like I have gone through life being bold because a lot of times, when people say, how did you leave your family? How did you do some of these opportunities and not being afraid? I had to look back at the fact that having a community of people to remind me that sometimes you're going to be afraid, but is that going to stop you from pursuing your opportunities and your dreams? And so as I made that question for International Women's Day, I also was thinking about the young girls that I come across in education, right? A lot of times we can be competitive. A lot of times we can be catty towards one another, but where's that girl code where we're building each other up in a world that's already building us down? And so that's where some of the questions also stem from for me.
Wow.
Serenity, you came to preach today, huh? Listen, look at my notebook. Thank you.
That's great. Shireen and Junla, please keep the
Yeah.
conversation
No,
going.
I'm just
guys.
connecting to a couple of things that both of our, guests have said today. One of them, it brings an analogy to mind. It's something you said, Junla, about having a robust root system. And I just think about root system and the field that we're all playing on, actually. And I think my role might be, as an ancestor in practice, to be actually flattening that field out for our sisters that are coming through. And I'm okay with that. I'm happy with that. If it means that I can flatten the field and somebody can go further than me, then I've done what I wanted to do. So there's that. And then, of course, Serenity, if I had to summarize the wisdom that you've shared with us today, it would be in a short phrase: pour into potential. Pour into potential. That's what I can do in my, the remaining years that I've got left in international education. That's what I'm intentionally going to be doing. I just want to thank you both for such amazing insights. You're a lot younger than me, and I learn every day from everyone. Thank you so much.
I want to pick up on something you said, Serenity. It was very simple, but it really touched me as relevant, which is that we need a community of mentors, people who have our backs in order to remind us, because there are times, especially at those times when we're afraid, like you said,
Mhm.
where you need other people to say, remember, you know, because you know, we do have the fire in our heart, but there are times when you're afraid or something's brought you down or circumstances and you lose it and you need other people to remind you. I love that. Thank you.
Yep, I have direct quotes around pouring into potential and leaning into that community of people that replenish you and build you back up again, because this work in international education, and I know you're only 4 years into it, but I can only imagine that your experiences in the Netherlands coming from New York really
Yeah.
tore you down. Like, as Shireen said, bring the biscuits and I'll bring the tea. I've been around the block quite a few times and I know exactly probably how you felt. So I'm glad that you can share that success that we have as women in international education heavily relies on our connection as a community of people. Make sure you find those individuals, whether they are your elders, like Shireen is graciously volunteering to be, or the people that know who you are and really who you are from back home, who can really speak truth into your life despite what your current experiences are.
Mm.
I think that stepping into, I want to go back to that. I talked a little bit about reclaiming space. There's a lot of power in that. And something Serenity said that I really want to make sure that I emphasize is like, you take that step. Don't like, you have to take that step. Step into that potential. And if there is anything that you feel like is a roadblock or a challenge towards that, it's not, just do it. Like, just do it. Just do it. Just step into that, insert yourself into places that maybe you're like, you know what, I'm not sure if I should really be. No, you should be there. You're exactly the reason, and you should be there. Know that that is the truth. And regardless of where you find yourself in the world, or whatever school you find yourself in, or whatever spaces you find yourself in, regardless of whether those spaces reflect you,
Mm.
you should be there. You need to be there, and you need to insert yourself. And then also, I think as Shireen was saying, staying curious and asking yourself, if you do find yourself in a space where maybe it's not really reflective in terms of women being represented, or people of color being represented, or women of color being represented, you can stay curious and ask yourself, well, why? And that's really what the theme of our International Women's Day is this year around inspiring action. It's like, well, women should be present. Why aren't they? And I think that is because you took that first step, because you took that risk, because you decided not to be afraid. That is what empowers others that are coming behind you to step into that space as well.
I really agree with that, Junla. And the one thing I would probably just tack on to the end is, it's this strange little word, permission. Permission. Give yourself permission that if you are, I learned this later on in life, and I think I got my voice when I became a mother, actually, but sometimes when you're in spaces where things are, you're trying and trying and trying, give yourself permission for your own well-being to step aside and say, that's all I can manage. That's okay. You know, there will be others that continue the struggle after you, or that will come alongside you. But it goes back to what you were saying, Junla, that you don't have to take it on your shoulders by yourself. If you're the only person like you in your context, we all are, we're all individuals, but you know what I mean. It's okay. It's okay to actually say, I need to take a well-being break. Maybe this is not the place for me. Who are other people? Can I start an affinity space? Who can work alongside me here? Or just take a breather. So give yourself permission. Insert yourself in every place you can, Junla. You're right, absolutely. But if it gets too hard, take a tea break.
Yeah.
We're gonna move right into Junla's question now because you were going there anyway, Junla. I heard you already doing it. So this is Junla's question, and I want to take a moment because this is our last question, and it's fantastic for our wrap up here, which is how can we translate inspiration into tangible action as individuals and organizations around equity and access in schools? So go for it, Junla.
Okay, I have a dual challenge. One
Ooh.
is because I want to offer opportunities for us to have a discussion. So I'm going to keep my part short. I think the thing that really resonated with me in regards to the International Women's Day and specifically this particular theme, Inspire Inclusion, was this part on the website that said, when women are present, we must
Yes.
ask, if
Mm.
not, why not?
Yeah.
And so that resonated because, listen, I've been to countless conferences, workshops, read resources on diversity and inclusion in international education, but oftentimes these resources and conferences kind of leave us as women with a nagging question. Okay, so what now what? You know, where is the space for women of color, not to just show up, but really truly thrive in international education?
Mm.
And oftentimes, while we do have a spark for inspiration, if there is not a clear path to action, that inspiration oftentimes withers. And so as a part of my own personal and professional practice, I have Adrienne Marie Brown as my guiding post, and her work around emergent strategy. She talks a lot about inspiration as a seed, and I kind of talked a little bit around rooting systems as well, but that inspiration is a seed that is brimming with potential. And I love that Serenity brought up that concept of potential and pouring into that potential. And I see us as international women in this room as cultivators of that potential.
Mm.
And I've come to realize that it's oftentimes it's up to us to transform that potential into tangible change. And it's hard. It's not easy at all. I mean, it's hard. We have to navigate a system that is not designed for our success. This is bring it, I'll bring the tea, you bring the biscuit situation. In international education, we have to navigate unconscious bias that hinders the rise to leadership positions in international schools. We have to counter established school cultures that may clash with leadership styles, leaving us feeling othered or outsiders. There's also limited support systems that might leave us without the tools and guidance specifically that are designed for our success as women in international education. But, you know, here's the truth of it all. While these challenges are real, they really don't define us, because ultimately, and again, I know Shireen mentioned this, but ALOC has been transformational in amplifying the voice of women of color, of women, of men, of people of color that are working in the context of international education, to understand that actually we are a force to be reckoned with.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think with 8 minutes left in our conversation, something that I'd like us to consider is an exercise that I like to do that comes out of the Liberatory Design for Equity process, where we kind of talk about imagine and name. So as we kind of open it up to everyone, what I'd like for us to consider is, like, imagine a future where women of color or women leaders not only thrive in international education, but actively shape its direction. What are concrete actions we might be able to take individually and collectively to turn that vision into a reality? And I would just love, Madeline, if it's okay, if we maybe spend the next 5-10 minutes discussing that as a whole group, because I would really love to hear people's perspectives that are out there now.
That's great. And we want to open it up to other people who would like to take off from that spark that you just lit, Junla. So would you say it once more?
Sure. Imagine a future where women of color, not only thrive in international education, but actively shape its direction. And I want to use that term women inclusively to include individuals that identify as women, also inclusive of non-binary. But what concrete actions can we take individually and collectively to turn this vision into reality?
If I may just jump in, because I'm really excited to hear this conversation. I just wanted to add to your question, and forgive me if I say your name wrong. It's a Junla.
Jala.
Jala. Okay, thank you so
Jala.
much. Thank you. So the question about how we can translate inspiration into tangible actions as individuals and organizations around equity and access in our school. Something that I've read, which was really interesting, is that an idea becomes imagination, and then imagination becomes a plan of action. And so when we have these ideas of what we envision for international schools, I know for myself, when I was working in the Netherlands, I had many ideas, and then I had imagination, and then I made a plan of action, right? So I wanted to collaborate with universities back home in the US to really allow international teaching opportunities and exposure for people to know that this world exists. And so now I'm in a school in Ghana where we do have a international teaching education program where we invite other educators around the world to be able to have the culture experience here. And I just think about, like, even in myself as a new international educator, and thinking about how to take action as individuals and organizations around the world, one of them has been to connect and collaborate and use my network to bring into the international education realm. I think that's, as we're talking about mentors and community, I think leveraging our own network to mix the two together has been really helpful for me. But I just really wanted to share that idea to imagination to a plan of action has been a really good basis for me in helping how I can turn my inspiration into tangible action.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. Does anybody else have a thought about Jala's question? Sorry.
I can think of a quick example. I try and just recently we had to go and visit a place to look at a potential program that we might be taking on. And I think that inclusion, specifically we're talking about people that are new to international education, is just take them along with you. If you're going to a meeting, say, I need that lady to be with me. I need this person to be with me. I need to have her there. That already elevates her. So we went along and it was very last minute. And I said, yeah, I needed to be in this space with me. I need her vision. I need her views. And she came. And without saying anything more than that, I had made a little step forward on that playing field, a little step forward. So what I try to do is I try to make little steps forward in many, many different places. And that what happens is it slowly builds a culture. Shireen will do that. Or you'll say, oh, I just really wanted to hear what she had to say. I'm really sorry, I'll get to you. But can you just finish what you were saying? When sometimes somebody who might be fearful of speaking in a space, somebody interjects, and that, trivializes what they have to say. So I say, no, I'll get to you. So it's those small little things that I'm very intentional that you don't have to make massive change. But when you add it all up, actually it's building culture from extending this analogy so much, but from the roots up. Yeah. From the grassroots up.
Yeah. And those small changes really affect how people feel. We talked about that the other day too, how you feel in terms of being included. Cam, you want to go next?
Hello, everyone. Happy International Women's Day. So I can't agree more with my friend Shireen, and I talk about this all the time, about that nudge theory. When you're entering the room, hold the door open for somebody else, bring them with you. And, in meetings, elevate those voices that are unheard. Sometimes people assume, because you're a woman or because you're a woman of color or you would identify a certain way, you know, it's not for you to make comments, but it's elevating everyone's voice to that equality. And also when you do that, it gives people power, doesn't it? They think, actually, I can do it because Shireen said I could do it, so I'm going to do it.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know
I've
what I
got-
love? I want to build on, oh, sorry, Jala,
I
go
was gonna
ahead.
say, just some comments in the chat. Christina mentioned supporting parents and mothers with free childcare when they return to work, looking after staff in this way. They will better look after the community, don't discriminate when promoting parents and mothers, encouraging to support them. Absolutely. Lauren mentioned a potential action would be open to vulnerability amongst the women in our community, give them space to vent, ugly cry. Yes. Actively help them find solutions to everything that's trying to hold them back. And she says this because she actually had this morning a release of her own ugly tears. Lauren, been there, done that. Christina also mentioned believe women when they have the courage to speak up. Shout out to Cam and Shireen for being nudges. I just made that word up because I love the nudge theory. Action creating mentorship programs with all international schools. It shouldn't fall on organizations outside of international education. Yes. Shout out to ALOC and their own mentorship program. I am a mentor in that program and I'm loving it. I love the mentee. Continue to share stories, inspire others. Yeah, so I love hearing the action in the chat. Teacher safeguarding policy, the culture of assuming positive intent, listening, being heard, validating, being validated, and actually taking care to mend, resolve, build, and create.
Wow.
A tiny quick story as well before we sign off. I think we're signing off now, but in our context, I'm really proud of this about our school. We've got 2 young mothers that have just joined us and we've created space and time for them to actually pump
Yes.
on International Women's Day. That has brought them back to us. That still nourishes their children. And everybody's a winner.
Mhm.
So those small things, and they're not small things for those women, just like when I had the coconut milk and the dates,
Yes.
it allows people to be seen, welcome, and there is space for you, all of you.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So we're going to wrap up now with some inspiration from our 3 panelists, and I have asked them to think about what are your final sort of like words of encouragement to our group. And Serenity, would you like to start us off with that?
I'm actually thinking, I think I missed that part, but
Oh, sorry.
it's okay. I think it's being bold and doing it anyway, you know, being afraid and doing it anyway. Just similar to what my question or just statement said, I really feel like that's just my mission right now in life. Is to really just go after the opportunities that you may think you're not qualified for, that you're not right to be in the space for, is to really go after your potential, understanding your potential, manifesting your potential, and also building your network and community. I'm all about network and community. The networking community that I have is so powerful that I've been able to leverage that when I find myself in a tight space, when I find myself down and out, when I find myself discouraged about opportunities, because I like to say you shouldn't do life alone. And a lot of times when we're in our head alone or when we're going through things alone as women, we think that people may not be able to relate or that we're too emotional or that we're complaining. But if you're being mindful of finding that safe space and leaning on your network and not being afraid to put yourself out there, that's what I would give to any woman today. As my last words.
That's great. I love
I
it.
can connect to what Serenity was saying. I've just got so much wisdom for you all. The ideas of having a safe space, developing your network. It brings me back to my idea about permission. And I was thinking, let me think about a fancy quote from my wisdom research that I'm doing, or this book I'm reading. But actually, one of the books that's really beautiful and that has influenced me and has become like a gift that I give many people. I hope you know it. It's called The Boy, the Mole, the Fox and the Horse. I can see Yasmin nodding there vigorously. And in there it says, asking for help isn't giving up, said the horse. It's refusing to give up. And I think that summarizes some of the ideas that we've had today. If you haven't got the book, it's by Charlie Mackesy. Get it and bring the tea.
That's great. Thank you. We're all going to remember the tea and the biscuits.
Yeah.
Jala?
You know, I think I want to say anyone who's out there that's listening, if you feel like, because I'm a type A person, I'm a firstborn, so I understand that there might be individuals of us out there that might need permission. If you need to tell yourself that you need permission, you can just say, well, Jala told me and she gave me permission too. And whatever you want to do in your life, tell them, well, Shireen told me, she gave me permission too. If you need the permission, you are hearing that permission given. Serenity is giving her permission. Madeline is giving her permission. Do what you need to do to be you in this world. It's not easy. I do want to leave you with a couple of maybe framework or thinking stems as you continue to do that equity work, and especially addressing that if not, why not question. If women are not in the room, why are they not in the room? And so one of the things that I know is really powerful in a framework is just to notice and reflect, imagine and name, analyze and critique, and then finally iterate around those solutions and move towards action. And I can do like a whole nother hour on this, but we're here.
That's great. I just heard that, so we're gonna maybe go back to Alok and ask you about that. But so yes, we've had a lot of inspiration today, and I think I just want to end by reminding everybody about the imagination that you talked about, Jala. You know, we are the only species that does have an imagination. You know, animals don't necessarily have an imagination in order to think about the future. And when you have that imagination about thinking what might be possible, no matter what your current circumstances are, I think it helps you to have hope. It inspires and makes you motivated. And then when you look around and you see examples of that actually happening, you heard many stories today from our panelists. That's really the fuel that we need in the world to keep us moving towards a future that really will be different than what it is today. So I want to end today by thanking everybody for taking your time. We know how valuable, I almost think time is worth more than money today. And I thank you for your time, and I hope that we'll see you again at some other events. Thank you so much to our panelists, amazing women who are so inspirational in every way. Serenity, Jala, and Shireen, I really am so appreciative. And thank you again to Alok for hosting this space and just kind of making a space for us to be. So thank you so much, everybody, and happy International Women's Day.
Happy International Women's Day.
Happy International Women's Day. Ramadan Kareem. Lovely to be with you all.
Thank you. You can unmute and say goodbye.
Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.